Hare Krishna. Question: how were prostitutes present in Ayodhya? Ayodhya is considered to be an ideal kingdom and people there were surely religious. So why were prostitutes present over there as is described in ninth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam? Answer: Srila Prabhupada refers to this also in the first canto when Krishna returns to Dwarka, and it said even the prostitutes come out to welcome him. And Srila Prabhupada explains over there that devotional service is so all-encompassing that even people who are engaging in debased professions can also become practice devotional service. So there, the thrust of Srila Prabhupada's focus is not on the point that the women were prostitutes, but on the point that even they were practicing devotional service, even they were attracted to Krishna. So this is how a devotee sees the all-encompassing nature of bhakti. Now, of course, if a person practices devotional service seriously, then that person will naturally, over a period of time, give up engagement in sinful professions and start practicing bhakti. So when we see such descriptions in scriptures, we have to understand their context. The point is not to glorify prostitution, definitely not. It is not even to condone prostitution. It is to include even the prostitutes within the Vedic fold, and that in the devotional plan that even they can be elevated. So was it that at that time people were completely religious and nobody needed this kind of things? Well, actually nobody needs it at any time. But when people are uncontrolled because of lust, then such things may be needed at certain times. Now the English language is often inadequate for explaining various concepts that are there in the Vedic fold. So for example, there was the tradition of Devidasis in the Vedic culture, and sometimes they are translated into English as prostitutes. So just as the word avatar is translated into English as incarnation, although the word incarnation has a connotation that it refers to somebody incarna, in flesh, and the Supreme Lord never comes in flesh. But the words are imperfect tools to foreign concepts, especially when the words are translations from other languages. So just as incarnation is like a okay word, but then we have to clarify the misconceptions that arise. So sometimes the Devidasis were uh, translated as prostitutes. Now that is entirely incorrect. The Devidasis are women who devote themselves to God, and there is a whole tradition of the Devidasis. So we see this in Ramananda Rai, so interaction with the Devidasis in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, that he was training them for dancing for the pleasure of Lord Jagannath. Now, Chaitanya Charitamrita focuses on this from the point of view of Ramananda Rai's self-control, that how in spite of being in the presence of such young, attractive women, he was not disturbed. But then the question may also arise, why were such women present? So actually in the Vedic culture, uh, there are many functions for which women are required, and many religious functions. One of them is like dancing in front of the Lord for his pleasure. We understand the Lord is the supreme enjoyer, and because he's the supreme enjoyer, so everything that is there in this world, the best of this world, should be offered for his enjoyment. So we offer bhoga. So the various arts and skills are there. So there will be musicians who will perform for the Lord's pleasure, but along with that, women would also perform. And now normally, even within the cultured society, the women who are married and living a family life, they will not go in public and dance. So there was a class of women who were actually considered sacred in many ways. So they were considered to be devoted to the Lord, and they would train themselves lifelong for becoming expert in skills like Bharatanatyam, Kathakali, and other traditional forms of dance and music and artistry, and they would perform for the pleasure of the Lord. So such women, they, because they were not married, so the word prostitute when used in Vedic culture is a very broad word. We generally use the word prostitute specifically for a woman who sort of sells her body so as to gain money and pleasure. So that is one context of the word. In the Vedic culture, in the traditional context, this word is also used for women, for any woman who is not under the protection of a man. Now, this is a very broad word, and words have different meanings at different times, and we shouldn't conflate. Conflate means confuse or mix the current meaning of the word with the various layers of meaning that it has had earlier. So, in one sense, any woman who is not under the protection of a man is referred to sometimes by this name. And when we see a label, a verbal label, we have to understand the cultural context in which it is used and not assume that it means the same thing that it means in our context. So, such women may also sometimes be referred to by the word prostitutes, and actually they were devoted to the Lord. And generally, how generation upon generation this would go on is that though they would not get married because they wanted to devote themselves to the Lord, and also that they would not uh, they they wanted to focus their time and energy on developing their skills and serve the Lord for his pleasure. So they would not get married, but then the generation's dynasty has to go on. So there is a time honored system by which the some respectable male would at appropriate time under religious sanction unite with them, and then the dynasty would go on. So this was not indiscriminate, this was not profligate, this was not wanton, this was very regulated under dharmic sanction, in the sense that by that if the son would be born, the son would act as the caretaker of the women when they would grow up. If a daughter would be born, the daughter would go on and continue the dynasty of these Devidasis. So over a period of time, definitely some corruption may have come up, and these women may have been exploited. But in many translations of Vedic literature and accounts of Vedic culture done by Western Indologists, the temples have been labeled often as brothels, where many such Devidasis were used for prostitution. That is a horrendous misrepresentation of Vedic culture. So, when we see the word prostitute in any Vedic context, we have to be careful. Firstly, to recognize that it is not something that is glorified as a profession. It is not even condoned. It is just that even they can be engaged in the process of devotional service. And second is that the word can also refer to a class of women who were living devoted for the pleasure of the Lord, and they are not at all doing what the word prostitute conveys today. Thank you.